Hello and welcome. This is Hands on Health, the podcast all about living your healthiest life on the coast. I'm Melissa Evans, and today we're joined by Meg Linza and Brett Byers from CMH's Quality Department. Meg is the department's director, and Brett is a quality nurse specialist. Meg and Brett, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. To get started, would you mind telling us what is the Quality Department?
Well, the quality department is often misunderstood, I think, in a lot of organizations, and especially from the public's perspective. We do a lot of reporting and tracking and trending for areas in which we can look for process improvement. We want to make sure we have a safe and high quality care experience for the patients, and that's what we spend most of our time on, is making sure that that's happening in the organization.
Yeah, at CMH, the quality department encompasses quality, employee health, clinical education. So we're involved in pretty much every aspect of the organization, from the inpatient side to outpatient clinics to educating staff, dealing with employee health stuff, work injuries, vaccinations, and kind of runs the gamut. We sit on multiple committees, spend lots of time in meetings, monitor performance data, like federally mandated performance data. We do a lot of monitoring and reporting for that. Basically everything under the umbrella of patient and staff safety.
We also have our policies and procedures are all housed under quality. So we have a support person, Noelle McClure, who helps with making sure our staff leaders and managers and directors and department leads are all working on making sure our policies are as up to date as possible, so that we're giving a roadmap for staff to follow good quality care.
I think that's a lot that your department is responsible for. And would you mind sharing how many people work in your department too, for those who don't know?
Currently we have 2 quality nurse specialists and a half FTE, or 2.5 people. We have 3 people, but 1 person is part-time. We have the clinical education coordinator, and we have the employee health nurse, and then we also are very fortunate we have a admin assistant, and Noelle, who I just mentioned, is our policy tech, or our policy vendor programmer. What else would you call her?
She's our policy wizard.
She's policy wizard, yeah.
And we are really fortunate here at Columbia Memorial, because Meg and I spend a lot of time visiting with our critical access hospital colleagues across Oregon. And we are quite fortunate to have the size of the staff that we do in our department. Many smaller critical access hospitals, and believe it or not, there are smaller critical access hospitals than ours. It's just one person. And they might have a director of quality, infection prevention, clinical education, employee health, and it's one person. And that's a real struggle for them. And so we feel really fortunate, because it gives us a much better opportunity to really impact patient care and staff safety throughout the organization compared to some others our size.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm sure to some people it sounds like that's a small department that we have, but I think it's really great to hear the comparison for those who maybe don't know or might take it for granted. That's
a direct result of administration, the C-suite recognizing how important quality and patient safety is. Not every critical access hospital has an administration that feels that it's important. Ours does, and it benefits the entire community.
Yeah, that's great. Would you both mind sharing what got you interested in working in the quality department to begin with?
I come with about 35 years of nursing experience in all areas of nursing in the hospital setting, and I think that this sort of culminates all that knowledge, experience, what I've learned, how I've developed my own career over the course of time. And I see it as a big picture department. It's a department that looks at how do we provide safe, high quality care to our patients? And we get lots of input that comes in through our department to try to figure out what opportunities we have for process improvement. And I like that. I think that that's a important part of why we're all here and what experience we have that we can lend it to improving the care that patients receive in our hospital.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I came into quality from the cancer center doing bedside nursing, and prior to that, med-surg unit, inpatient nursing. And I agree with Meg. It's definitely a big picture kind of view in our department. I do miss the direct patient care. I miss starting IVs and accessing ports and giving medications and doing assessments. But I really like taking that eagle eye view of everything throughout the entire organization. Like, for example, right now I'm working on a couple of projects that are multi-year projects, very long in scope with goals, hopefully, to move patient care and patient safety in a positive direction over years. And so I moved from a situation where I was impacting maybe just the one patient that I happened to be taking care of at that moment to potentially impacting a system that could benefit thousands of patients over the next decade or two.
Yeah, I think that's amazing to hear about. And that's something I personally didn't realize, that you work on multi-year projects, which makes sense, of course, because quality doesn't change just year by year. It's something that is continually being focused on and worked on. It's really neat. And I think it's neat that you both came from having some clinical, patient-focused background before working in this department. I think that's really neat.
It definitely helps, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Would you mind sharing what brought you to the Oregon coast?
I am an Oregonian. I was born in Portland, and birthdays were often spent in the summertime at the coast with my family. We were big campers. My mother loved to pack up the car and head to the coast, and so I just have an affinity to the ocean and the river. I love being around the water. My husband's a avid fisherman, so it just seemed like the perfect place to come.
Yeah, for me, it was family. I'm a transplant. I moved here when I started working at CMH from Montana, but my parents had been out here, and I wanted to be closer to them because they were getting a little bit older and need a little bit of help from time to time. And I had looked at other hospitals in the area, but one of the things that I liked about CMH, and one of the reasons I came to Astoria, was the Plane Tree designation and that person-centered care focus. It was a lot different. It's an entirely different model of care than a lot of smaller hospitals. And I like the fact that it's a critical access hospital. That was really alluring to me too. I had considered places like Providence, Portland, and OHSU, and they're fantastic organizations, but I like walking down a hallway in a hospital and knowing every person that I come across. And you can develop really functional relationships where you can accomplish great things together over the years. And to me, that's important in my career.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear. And it's definitely true here. I know personally, every time I walk in the hall, it's very rare that I don't recognize someone. And I think that's a really great feeling to have that community within our organization. It's really neat. Would you both mind sharing how long you have been working at CMH so far?
I've been here 2.5 years. So I came in August of 2020.
Wow.
Worked for Providence for 30 plus years for Providence, and decided I wanted to live, and I live here in Astoria, so I wanted to work for the community that I serve, and that's why I moved to CMH. And I agree with Brett. I love the Plane Tree philosophy. It meets with my own core values, and I also love having those relationships that we have in the hospital that are so important, and making sure that we're getting good work done, and very effective teams.
I'll be knocking on the door of my 5-year anniversary in a couple of months. So almost 5 years.
That's great. Congratulations. I know you both have talked about this a little bit, but would you mind elaborating on what it is that you do in your different roles for people who don't know?
I was laughing about thinking about this question, because every day is different. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I like working in quality. Nothing is predictable. I think we work very clearly in a consulting role for staff, for our executive suite, for our providers, for patients and family members. So I think that that's something we do all day long. I don't think there's ever, we have our meetings, our scheduled things that we have, but for the most part, what we're there for is people dropping in and being able to ask questions and being able to help them navigate some very complicated processes. So I think that that's been an exciting part of this role and our department, is that we don't have a particular scripted out day of what we do. It's usually very different every day, and it's kind of exciting that way, I think. It makes it not boring.
Yeah, and that's, that could be said generally about nursing in general. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to nursing when I was looking to switch careers. It's because every day is different, and there's so many different opportunities in the field of nursing. You can kind of choose whatever specialty you want. And the nice thing about quality is I get to dip my toes into all areas of nursing and clinical care, not just one specialty focus. And that's important to me. It makes every day interesting and very challenging, and I like that. My normal day, I review a lot of charts. I spend a lot of time in the electronic health record reviewing charts for various quality improvement projects. I talk to a lot of staff. I serve on several committees. I serve on the Friendship Fund Committee, which is great because that helps our own caregivers in times of need, and that's really important to me. I do a lot of consulting work with just our colleagues. That's one of the nice things. We have having a kind of a small office. We can really bounce ideas off of each other and collaborate to come up with the best solution to a problem. And that's the interesting thing, is you never know what's going to be on the other end of the phone when the phone rings in our office. And I try to approach that with gusto, because each one, it might be a really easy problem to solve. It might be just a wrong number, and I transfer it to the right person. And it might be something that ends up taking up the rest of my day. But then when you are confronted with a challenge like that, and then you can come out on the other side, and maybe staff and patients are really happy with the work that you've done, then that's when you go home feeling great about the work that you've done and the people that you've been able to help.
Brett's an excellent service recovery person. He is so great with patients on the phone and very patient, and makes them feel like they're being listened to, and he's acknowledging their concerns, and I really appreciate that. I think he's been instrumental in helping other people learn how to have those difficult conversations.
Would you two mind explaining the ways that your department works with patients? I know you just mentioned that patients will call the quality department. Do you mind explaining why that is and how those different processes work?
I think when somebody it calls the hospital and the switchboard gets the call, they often, if they don't know how to directly send the patient to whatever department, they often just send the patient to the quality department. That's okay for us because we can quickly redirect people if that's the case, but oftentimes we're just the listening ear, and we don't mind doing that. I think it's very helpful understanding that we are great at listening and taking the information and hearing people's concerns and wanting to do that for folks, but that we ultimately want to get people directed to the person that can potentially make a difference for that person or do something to help them. So that might be the department manager or the department leader versus the quality department. We don't mind trying to help people out. And like Brett said, we often get very involved in trying to advocate and work with the patient or the family member to try to resolve their concern, and often are the intermediary to make that happen.
Yeah, sometimes we function kind of like a triage center. Like Meg said, people will call the switchboard and then maybe they're not sure who to send it to, or maybe they try to transfer to the clinic, but maybe the clinic's really busy. And so then they can end up with us. And I think it's important that we be able to function as a department that oftentimes maybe patients have tried a lot of different options and maybe they're frustrated. And we know healthcare in America can be a very frustrating experience for people who are chronically or acutely ill. And to have somebody on the other end of the line that's going to take everything they say at face value and take their concerns seriously is super important for the patient or the family. And while I may not be able to directly solve somebody's problem, I often can help speed up the process with which that problem gets solved. And that sometimes that just makes all the difference. Being able to know who to go to, how to talk to them to get things moving along, how to come up with solutions, how to work collaboratively, ultimately to serve the patient. That's ultimately why we're all here. That's what we do every day. Everybody in this organization is to serve the patients. There's certain requirements, federal government requirements, quality gets involved in when it comes to patients and certain issues and concerns. But most of the time, I found patients just really need to feel like there's somebody on the other phone that cares and is going to take their concerns seriously. And we absolutely do that in the quality department. That's one of the things that I take great pride in my work.
I think it helps that we do know all of the staff members and the leaders in the organization, so we can expedite a concern that somebody has, or at least get the right person on the line. Or if they haven't heard back from somebody, we can nudge somebody to call that person back. We often do that, and that helps people feel like somebody cares about what they're bringing to our attention.
Have there been any standout experiences while you've been working here that you would like to share that happened in the quality department?
Oh, there have been so many. One of the things I think that we do really well is because we have access to patients and family members and staff and providers sharing concerns with us, or being able to send us a safety report or something that was maybe a near miss, or something that they noticed that could have been avoided. That gives us an opportunity to make sure it never happens again. And I always tell patients or family members when they call us with a concern that I'm grateful that they shared this with us, because I think part of the reason they call us is so that whatever happened or whatever they experienced never happens to anybody else. And so I think that's an exciting thing for me, to have that type of influence, to be able to take that information and in our department do some work on assuring that it never happens again, or that we work on process improvement and improving our safety and experience for our patients when they're here in our hospital. There's been a number of things that has occurred, and it made me feel a lot of reward in knowing that we made a difference by learning about that information and then doing something about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of things that we do, I can't talk about because of confidentiality purposes, but the things that inspire me in my job day to day is like watching our clinical educator, Emily Collins. She has such a passion for the work that she does, of trying to help everybody be the best clinician that they can be. And that's really, really important. And she inspires me every day. And the work that Noelle McClure does, managing like all of our policy tech stuff, and she's kind of the glue that holds our office together. I couldn't do my job as well as I do without her assistance. And so she's really important. And we have some new staff members. We have Becky Blackhawk, who is handling a lot of things with accreditation. And without her, we would probably be a little lost at the moment. And she's doing great work, and she's brought a great new energy to our department in this organization. So that really stands out to me. And our new employee health nurse, Jocelyn Williams, she is brilliant, and she's going to do great things with that department and really help expand our department for our employees and help ensure their safety and their health long term. Because we're kind of like a little town here. We got about 700-ish employees. And so she's got 700-ish patients, and that's a big load. And so she's going to do great things. So as far as very specific things that really stand out to me on a personal level, when a patient calls or comes to visit us and maybe they're really upset, and that happens sometimes, when we're done with the conversation, if they're smiling and thanking me and we're cracking jokes together, that stands out. Those are the things that I take home with me at night. To me, that's a huge victory. But just in general, it's my colleagues that inspire me every day. That's what stands out for me.
And I'm sure he didn't mean to not mention Debbie O'Reilly, but Debbie is also our part-time quality nurse specialist, and she's our rock. She just is. She is steady Eddie. She is the one that you can always count on, and she has the experience in our department. She's the one that was there when I came, and if you have any questions about what happened in the past or historical information, she's got it, and really helps us with moving things forward that are very important things, like our restraint audits and making sure our blood transfusions go well. And she does a lot of work with our peer review and our provider peer review team. So again, we just have an amazing team. We just have a great working relationship with one another, and it's just a very strong team. Very fortunate.
And Debbie,
and grateful.
if you're listening, that was definitely an unintentional oversight. You're in Norway now as we're recording this, so my apologies. I think maybe in my head I blocked it out because I was jealous that you're in Norway. But yes, Debbie is wonderful. Everybody in our department is so great. They work so hard.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think it says a lot too about both of you that you lifted everyone else up in that answer. It's really neat to hear about the teamwork that your team has. Before we finish up today, is there anything else that either of you would like to talk about more or go back to that's related to quality that we haven't talked about?
Well, I would like to say, I think everybody recognizes that healthcare in modern America is a challenge. It is especially, I was going to say post-COVID, but we're not quite post-COVID yet. That dramatically changed how healthcare is delivered in this country, and it's changed our ability to grant access to healthcare. It's tough. It's tough for patients. I mean, everybody who works at the hospital is also a patient themselves at various points. So it's tough from the patient perspective. It's tough from the caregiver perspective. And I would just encourage everybody in the community to remember that we all live in this community. We are community members here as well, and our organization is filled with 700 incredibly bright people who care a lot about their patients and the community they serve, and everybody is trying their very best every single day. And it's easy to get frustrated. I get frustrated myself too as a patient sometimes, but I always try to grant the people that I'm working with grace, because I would like grace extended to me. And so just everybody on the North Coast, just remember that we're your neighbors, we're your friends, we're your family, and we all care about each other, and we want to do our very best to serve you.
Well, thank you both for doing this and talking with me today. It's been really great.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for joining us as a listener. This has been an episode of Hands on Health, brought to you by Columbia Memorial Hospital in Astoria, Oregon. CMH is an independent, not-for-profit health system that provides comprehensive, person-centered care in Northwest Oregon. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts, online at columbiamemorial.org, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time for another episode of Hands on Health.